En Así Amaneció, la entrevista.
Son las 8:31 de la mañana y tenemos un lujo de invitado. Él es el economista Joshua White, Ronald. Vamos a hablar con él. Él fue ex miembro de la Comisión de la Bolsa y Valores de Estados Unidos, profesor de la Universidad de Vanderbilt. Esto de que el señor Musk haya comprado Twitter ha revolucionado las redes sociales, ha revolucionado las noticias.
Tanto que Elon Musk sigue en tendencia de Twitter desde varias semanas.
Así es. Y la verdad es que con mucha razón, porque no todos los días se paga 44 billones.
Mil millones de dólares.
44 billones de dólares por una red social. Ahí está el trino, el Ahí Twitter. Sí. Creativo se puso nuestro productor. Sí. Bueno, vamos con la primera pregunta. Vamos a preguntarle a él. Yo tengo una pregunta muy específica y tiene que ver con las inversiones que tiene el señor Musk en China y si eso va a afectar dentro de Estados Unidos y a Twitter. Good morning, Mr. White. My first question has to be with all the investment that Mr. Musk have done in China. Are they going to cause problems for Twitter in the United States?
Good morning. Thank you for having me on. That's a great question. China is a very important market for Mr. Musk's other ventures, such as Tesla. They opened a factory in Shanghai, and that's been a huge driver of their success, and that's a big market for Mr. Musk. So with the purchase of Twitter and the fact that Twitter is currently not allowed in China, then Mr. Musk is going to have to be very careful in how he operates and perhaps work with the Chinese government in their demands or limitations on Twitter's availability.
Bueno, nos dice que sí, que es verdad, que es una buena pregunta porque el señor Musk acaba de abrir una planta en China de Tesla y que esa planta en China de Tesla es parte de su éxito, que Twitter no está permitido en China, por lo cual el señor Musk va a tener que trabajar muy, muy cuidadosamente y muy cerca del gobierno de China para que esto no le cause un problema a Twitter. Ronald.
Mi pregunta va relacionada a la comercialización interna dentro de la plataforma. Si bien Facebook ha sido la plataforma número 1 para poder comercializar y llevar a grandes cifras a dicha multinacional o compañía, Twitter, ¿por qué no ha podido ser comercializado a esa altura? Y si Musk de pronto tenga un plan para poderla comercializar, porque aparte de que la compañía la sabemos o especulamos que la podemos usar, la va a usar como instrumento político, ahora le toca comercializarla.
Mr. White, our second question has to be with advertising. Why hasn't Twitter capitalized on advertising, for example, as Facebook has done? In the financial world, is that an issue with Twitter?
Great question, and you're correct. Twitter has not monetized, their users and their engagement with their platform, as well as other social media companies like Facebook and Google. And I think that's a big reason why Elon Musk believes that his Twitter investment will generate a return, and that he's willing to invest so much money in that. A lot of Twitter's use is for breaking news. And a lot of media outlets use Twitter posts or tweets, and they embed them in their articles. And so some of the things that Musk has proposed is charging media companies for using Twitter content to drive up revenue.
Dice que sí, que efectivamente que Twitter no ha hecho un gran trabajo en el sentido de la publicidad, pero que Musk tiene puntualizado eso, que dice que muchos de los medios de comunicaciones se aprovechan de Twitter y generan noticias y generan revenue llevándolo a la página de ellos usando las noticias, y que él cree que Elon Musk, una de las cosas que ha pensado es cobrarle a los medios de comunicación por el uso de
link.
Twitter. Greta.
Sí, mi pregunta va dirigida a qué tan difícil es convertir Twitter en una compañía privada y si hay perdedores económicamente hablando en esta negociación.
our third question has to be with the ownership of Twitter now. How difficult is going to be to become a private company? And is there any losers in this transaction?
Great question. So, the difficulty, he has the financing secured now. He has banks that are willing to both loan him money and loan money after he pledges shares of Twitter. So the only outstanding question about taking the company public is where is the equity contribution coming? And so that's where Elon Musk has been selling Tesla shares, and will also try to attract other investors to invest in the stock of Twitter as a private company. So I expect that he has the ability to take the company private. For your second question, who are the losers? Well, the stockholders, the current stockholders of Twitter will win because they will sell their shares
very
at
high,
a higher price, but perhaps the Twitter employees would be the losers.
Bueno, él nos dice que lo primero para hacer la compañía privada tiene que conseguir el dinero, que él ha estado vendiendo acciones de Tesla y que cree que los bancos y va a traer algunos inversionistas nuevos, que creo que en ese tema no va a tener problemas. Y la segunda parte de tu pregunta, Greta, él dice que los verdaderos perdedores son los empleados, no los shareholders, porque a ellos les van a pagar de más sobre las acciones que tenían en Twitter. Voy a hacerle la pregunta yo a él ahora. Señor White, ¿usted cree que se le hizo un invitado el día de ayer la misma pregunta? ¿Usted cree que esto es muy similar cuando en los 80, 90 y principios de los 2000 un millonario compraba un medio de comunicación? Mr. White, my question has to be with, do you think that this takeover of Twitter, or this buying of Twitter by Mr. Musk has the same resemblance that when a mogul, a millionaire, used to buy media outlets in the 90s and the 2000s?
Yes, I think there are some really strong parallels. And if you think about Twitter and as a social media platform, it really is sort of news in real time. Mm-hmm. And so I think an attraction of Musk is to acquire that the same way that Bezos acquired a large ownership in the Washington Post, and other very wealthy individuals want to buy newspapers to sort of control that public narrative.
Él dice que sí, que se ve muy parecido, porque la diferencia es que esto es noticias en real time, en tiempo real, y que hubieron muchos millonarios que se dedicaron en las épocas que yo mencionaba a comprar diarios.
Con esta nueva negociación, ¿qué tantos nuevos clientes podría traer Twitter? Y no sé si también se multiplicará el tema de noticias falsas como tal.
Do you think that with this new ownership, will Mr. Musk be able to bring new clients that didn't believe in Twitter before? And what's your point of view about Mr. Musk owning Twitter and fake news?
Yeah, so and you cut out a little bit on that second question. I think the question was, will there be an elimination or an introduction of fake news on Twitter? And I think that, if Musk follows through with his plan to reduce content moderation, it could introduce more extreme views and views that would potentially be not grounded in reality. Now, he's also made a push to remove what are known as bots on Twitter. Uh-huh. And so to the extent that he removes those sort of fake accounts, then hopefully or potentially that would offset some of that fake news.
Dice que él va a cambiar el tema de sacar a los robots y a las cuentas falsas, que él ha venido hablando de eso desde hace algún tiempo.
O sea, eliminar estas
sí,
fake news.
Va a hacer los fake news.
Más que una pregunta para nuestro invitado, es un comentario que me gustaría hacerle, ¿no? Ajá. En la serie House of Cards, ¿no? Frank Underwood le dice a una de sus asistentes, le dice que se molesta y le dice que más importante, primero es el poder y luego viene el dinero. Es decir, en este caso yo creo que Musk intenta obtener mucho poder a través de Twitter para que luego le entre el dinero. De hecho, ningún presidente en el mundo escribe a través de Facebook algún comunicado. Todos los comunicados presidenciales, todos los comunicados empresariales se hacen a través de Twitter.
Our reflection is like, I don't know if you have watched House of Cards, where Frank Underwood tells his associate that power brings the money, not the money brings power. Do you think, and also most of the presidents of the world don't get their their message across with Facebook or Instagram? They do it through Twitter. So, what's your opinion about the power that Mr. Musk will earn?
I like the comparison, and I am a fan of House of Cards.
Okay, so you know it.
Frank Underwood would certainly knew how to use mechanisms to control the power. I do think your point is spot on in that world leaders use Twitter to communicate, and now when we have one person that's perhaps has strong political views or world views and economic interests, and they could control what content or what users can interact with Twitter, then it does impact the world, and it does impact those world leaders. And I would expect them to be concerned about the new Twitter model, and you might see them also move to new platforms and competitors' platforms where there's potentially less control.
Bueno, él dice que sí, que le encanta House of Cards, que tu comentario fue en el punto, y que dice que sí, que los presidentes se comunican a través de Twitter, y que es la red para el poder, pero que él cree que dependiendo de cómo vayan las cosas, los líderes del mundo se pueden cambiar a otras plataformas. Mi última pregunta tiene que ver con uno de los temas que también pregunté ayer, y es algo inmediato que el señor Musk pretendía, que era que gente pagara por $3 por estar certificados como cuenta. Mr. White, my last question has to be with a comment that Mr. Musk did on Twitter a couple of weeks ago about charging people $3 for a certified account. I know that it's not going to be a lot of money that could help him go over the top with how much he's buying. But do you think that that's a good idea?
Yeah, so Twitter has tried the sort of subscription fee model. They have sort of a pilot version of it they call Twitter Blue, where you pay a little extra money and you interact with fewer ads. I think it will be difficult for Twitter to use that source to grow a significant area of revenue. I can see Mr. Musk exploring that to generate some revenue, but I don't think it will ever replace sort of the traditional advertisement by companies wishing to sell their products, just because other platforms are available for social media, and when we see this type of setup in other social media platforms, it hasn't been as popular.
Él dice que sí, puede ser, pero que no ve como una gran ventaja cobrar por esto, que Twitter ya tuvo una cosa parecida que se llamaba Twitter Blue, pero que la verdad es que no funciona. Ronald, quiero aprovechar para preguntarle la economía de Estados Unidos, una sola pregunta de lo que hablamos ayer, lo que tú me decías ayer.
Por supuesto.
Quiero preguntarle qué está pasando con la economía de Estados Unidos, que se está reduciendo por primera vez en tanto tiempo. Así de sencillo. I want to take advantage of this interview, Mr. White.
Y que recomiendan a los ciudadanos norteamericanos ahorrar, ¿no? Esta preocupación nace aterrizando al territorio ecuatoriano, es porque Estados Unidos estornuda y a nosotros nos da la gripe.
Yeah. I want to take advantage of you for a second. And we read yesterday about the economy of the U.S. shrinking. And you're an expert in economy, and why are we so worried about that in Ecuador? Is because you guys in the U.S. sneeze and we get the flu. So, what's happening? And the recommendation of many media outlets that we have been reading is that you Americans, and of course we Ecuadorians, as we have the dollar too, we need to begin to save money. What's going on?
Yeah, so we did have a setback. Our GDP shrunk quite a bit as the news was released yesterday. And so, a couple factors I think were driving that. We had a wave of COVID, the Omicron wave, that impacted businesses during the period that GDP pulled back. We've also had, supply chain issues that affect us. It affects every country
in the world,
trying
yes.
to get products to sell. Mm-hmm. And inflation is starting to become a real concern. Inflation's starting to be so high that, consumers are starting to save money and pull back on spending. So I totally agree. This is not just a U.S. problem. I think the entire world is faced with the struggles between COVID and inflation, and it's something that we're going to have to work through these supply chain issues and also try to get through the end of this, hopefully the end of this pandemic before we can fully recover.
When was this done? When was the month that this measure was done?
So it would have been through the first quarter of 2022. So
Okay.
It would have been during the wave of Omicron that really hit the U.S. pretty hard in December and January.
Okay. Dice que el reporte que hemos leído nosotros es desde casi diciembre hasta abril, donde una ola de Omicron terrible, acordémonos, que eso afectó la inflación, ¿ya? La gente estaba gastando mucho y la gente empezó a cobrar mucho más. Por eso tuvieron que subir las tasas de interés para que la gente empiece a ahorrar y dejar de gastar. Y finalmente, por lo que estamos sufriendo todos en el mundo, y es el problema de los envíos, de las cargas, de los barcos, de los contenedores, el problema global, y que no solamente lo está sufriendo Estados Unidos, sino que lo está sufriendo todo el mundo. Do you think the U.S. will suffer from the war between Russia and Ukraine?
I don't know that the war between Russia and Ukraine will have a significant impact on the U.S. economy. Now, there are companies that have stopped doing business in Russia as a result of that war. And so for those companies, it will impact them. It will certainly reduce their profits. Mm-hmm. But probably the biggest impact on both the U.S. and the world is the inflation on commodities such as wheat. Ukraine is a big producer of wheat. Mm-hmm. And there's also impacts on energy. We've seen oil prices skyrocket. So
of course.
That kind of impact happens on the inflation side.
Bueno, le pregunté que si la guerra de Estados Unidos y Ucrania iba a afectar a Estados Unidos. Me dice que no, que él no cree, pero que hay ciertas compañías que hacen negocios con Rusia y con Estados Unidos y con Ucrania que van a ser afectadas, pero que hay comodidades como el trigo y productos energéticos como el petróleo que están haciendo que los precios suban a nivel global. Mr. White, it's been an honor, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope to have you here in the near future.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Bye-bye.